So in this tutorial I'll show you how to create a very basic casting bar in Unity by using the new UI system. And as you can see, whenever we start our game, the casting bar is not visible as long as we're not casting any spells. So if we start casting a spell, the bar becomes visible, and when we're done casting, it fades away. If I pause the game here, you'll see that the name of the current spell we are casting is shown on the casting bar, and the total time it takes to cast the spell is shown here, and then the time we have been casting is shown here, so you can see how far you are with casting your spell. I have added functionality so that you can change the color of the casting bar depending on the spell you're casting. For example, if I press my other button here, I'll cast a Frostbolt, and then the color is blue, and if I press the third button, well, then I'm going to cast a heal here. And as you can see, you can't spam your buttons. If you spam them, then it won't start casting this next spell until the first spell is done. Yes, and that's basically what we're going to do in this tutorial. As usual, there's a link to the full project in the video description below, and that project contains all assets and scripts used in this tutorial, and all the scripts will have full line comments. So if you like my tutorial and it was able to help you out, then please support me by getting that project. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is to set up the visible things of the casting bar, and I'm just going to use plain square sprites in this tutorial, but if you want to add some other shapes or something, you can download your own sprites or create your own sprites. This concept should work exactly the same with those other types of sprites as well. The reason that I've chosen to use plain square sprites is because this tutorial only shows the concept of how to do it, so I'm going to keep it as simple as possible. So the first thing we need to do is to add the background of the health bar, and we do that by clicking Create, UI, and then selecting an image. And this image is going to be our background. So when you created the image, it added a canvas and an event system to your scene, and the event system handles clicks and everything on the UI, and the canvas is basically what is used for rendering all these UI elements here. You can see I have my image here, and it's a child element of the canvas. If I would take this image and put it outside the canvas, then it's not visible anymore, because the canvas can't render it when it's not in a canvas. So whenever you have some UI elements, you need to have a canvas in your scene, and you can have more elements under one canvas, and you can have more canvases in your scene. But we're just going to work with one canvas. Okay, so this is going to be our background, so you might as well just select it and rename it to background. And I'm just going to use the sprite. I'm not even going to add a source image. I'm just going to use this plain one. The only thing I'm going to do is to change the color of it. So just select the color and then go to like whatever color you want to have. I just want a black one. So I'm going to place this one in the middle. I'm going to select the rect tool here to the far right. I'm going to place it in the middle of my canvas, and then I'm going to scale it so it's a little longer here, maybe a little higher, and then I'm going to place it in the middle again. So this is going to work as my background. And the next thing I need to do is to add the inner part of my casting bar, and that is going to be called a mask, because we're going to mask our casting bar to make it look like we cast a spell. So the mask is basically going to create the animation for us. So if we click on the background, press duplicate, and rename one of them to mask, and the mask is going to be the inner part of the cast bar, so it's going to have another color. So I'm going to take the lower one here and make it a little grayish, dark gray here, and then I'm going to make it a little smaller than the original background. Just going to zoom in here so it's easier, but I only want it a little smaller so that there's only like a little edge around the inner part of the casting bar. Yes, so this is basically gonna be how my casting bar is gonna look when it's empty, when when the casting color hasn't filled out the whole bar. So because this is a mask, then we need to add a mask to it. So we can do that by clicking Add Component, going to UI, and then selecting Mask, because this one is going to mask our casting bar. And you'll see how that works in a moment. So if we take our mask here and duplicate it, and on the duplicate we're just going to rename it to casting bar, cast bar, and I want to change that color to, for example, standard as green or something. And as you can see, if I take my green part of the casting bar and move to the left, well, then it goes over the edge here. And I'm not interested in seeing it going over the edge here, because basically the effect we're going to make is that we're going to have our green part of the casting bar start here, and then when we start casting, it's going to move to the right like this to fill out the gray part of the casting bar, so it looks like we are actually casting a spell. So to do that, we need to add this mask that we already did, and then we need to take the casting bar here and add as a child element of the mask. So if you look here, if we pull it out now, you'll see that the green part of the casting bar is not visible anymore on the left side of the casting bar. So what we're going to do is that we're going to place our casting bar outside here, the green part out here, and then we're going to start casting a spell. And when we start casting a spell, well, then the casting bar is going to move here from the left to the right. And then we need to define, well, if we have a spell that has a 5-second cast, well, then it needs to take 5 seconds for this casting bar to go from the left part here to its end position over here. So the next thing we're going to do is to create some scripts that can actually handle this casting bar functionality for us. And the first thing I want to do is to create a class called spell, and that class is going to handle all the different kinds of spells we're going to cast. So if we want to create a new spell in our game, we can just create a new instance of this class. So if we want to make a fireball, well, then we create a fireball instance so we can cast that fireball. And to do that, we need to create a new script. Just do that by right-clicking in your asset folder, clicking create, and then selecting your preferred script. And I'm going to go with C#. And this script is just going to be named spell. Before I can open this, I need to import my Unity Visual Studio tools here. If you don't have Visual Studio and don't have Unity Visual Studio tools installed, then don't do anything like this. It's just something I need to import to be able to open my scripts. And it also gives me functionality so that I can debug. So when your script is open, your spell script is open, then delete the inheritance here from monoBehavior, because this script is never going to sit on a game object and we want to create a new instance of it. So basically we're not going to use any functionality from Unity in this script. So we're going to go do some basic Zap coding here. So delete the monoBehavior and delete start and update. So this class needs to define everything a spell has. So later in your game, if you want your spell to do damage, well, then you would also define a field here that indicates how much damage the spell would do, for example. But the things I'm going to add here is a private string, and that's going to be the name of the spell here. And the next thing I'm going to do is to add private float, and it's going to be a cast time. So these two things indicate the name of the current spell I'm casting and the time it takes to cast it. And I also want a color, as you saw in the intro of the tutorial. Well, when I cast a frostbolt, for example, my casting bar was blue. So just to add some little more fancy things, then make a private color 32 and call it spell color, like this. Yes. Okay. So these are called fields. These are variables here we're going to use in our spell, but we also need to be able to set these. So whenever we in our game someplace want to create a fireball spell, well, then we need to tell the fireball spell what name it has, what cast time it has, and what color it needs to be. So we're going to make a constructor here, and a constructor always has the same name as the class it sits in. So this constructor is going to be named spell. So you're going to write public spell, and notice that there's no return type here, and that's because it's the constructor. So you just write the accessor, which is public, and the name of the class, and then you create the scope here underneath. So in here we need to be able to create our spell, and we need to tell it the name, cast time, and spell color. And to do that, we need to define what this spell needs whenever we instantiate it. So here's an example. If we somewhere in our game would say spell fireball equals new spell, well, then we need to tell this spell that it needs a name and a cast time and a spell color. And to do that, we need to define what it needs here in the constructor. So here we're going to write string name, comma, float, cast time, comma, color 32, spell color. So these are basically the three variables up here that we need to set here. So now when I say, here's an example, don't write this, when I say fireball equals new spell, well, then you can see now it needs a name, a cast time, and a color, because I just defined that we need that here. And now we need to set these fields, because right now there's no data saved in these fields. So we need to say this dot name equals name, which does that this name up here is equal to that name in here. So if I would say spell fireball equals new spell, and I would say fireball like this, well, then this name here would be equal to fireball, and it would save the fireball name in this variable up here. So whenever I needed to get the name from the spell I'm casting, I can access this variable here and get that name and check if it's a fireball I'm casting, for example, and write it on the casting bar. So that's basically what we're doing here. We're setting everything up. So this dot cast time equals cast time, and this dot spell color equals spell color. And the reason that I'm writing this is because I want to access these variables up here. If I would just write name, well, then it always takes the local variable here, and I don't want to set a value on this one. I want to set a value on this one up here, so I write this in front of it. So I set this one equal to this one instead. Okay, so that's it for now in here. We're going to come back to this class later, but this is everything we need to do right now in the spell. So jump back into Unity. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is to create the castbar script that is going to move the castbar itself. So just click in your asset folder, or right click in it, and select your script type, and then write casting bar. When you've done that, we need to open the script. And now we need to set up all the things we actually need to make our casting bar move. So first of all, we need our start position, because we know where we need to move from, and we need to reset that position and everything. So private vector free, and call that start position, start pos. It's going to be our start position, and then we need private vector free, and it's going to be our end position. So we need to know where we are moving from and where we're moving to. So if we look at it in Unity, it would be this is our start position out here, and this is our end position in here. So the next thing we need to do is to jump back into the script here, and we also need to get a reference to our image, because on our cast bar here there is an image, and this is the image we want to change the color of, and at some point we want to make it blue, red, or green, or whatever. So we need a reference to this image, and we can get that by writing private image. And if you don't have anything called an image, you can right click on it, press resolve, and use Unity's engine.ui. and it actually just adds the namespace up here. So if you don't have Visual Studio and you can't right click and press resolve, well, then just go up here and write using Unity engine.ui, and then just call this cast image. Other than that, we also need a reference to the rect transform, because the rect transform is actually the thing we are moving out here to make this image here move. So this is the rect transform setting on the game object. And as you can see, when I move this, the position here changes. So this is basically what we want to change from within our script. So we need reference to this, and we can get that by writing private rect transform, and then we're gonna call this cast transform. So now we need to set up these fields up here. So the first thing we need to do is say cast transform equals get component rect transform. So basically this line looks at the game object and takes the rect transform and creates a reference here, so we can actually use this variable here to change the position now by saying, for example, cast transform dot something here. The next thing we need to do is to set our start position and our end position. So our end position is basically the position that the transform is sitting in now. If we look in Unity, it has the perfect position for stopping the cast because it fills up the whole bar. So basically we can say that our end position equals cast transform dot position. So that's going to be our end position. Our start position, on the other hand, is going to be it's going to have the same Z axis, the same Z position and the same Y position, but the X position is going to be the same position, but minus the length of the health bar itself. So if we start here, then it's going to have this position minus the whole length, so it starts out here. And that's the only thing we're going to change. So if we go to our script here and says set the start position, we say equals new vector 3, and it's going to be equal to cast transform dot position dot x minus the cast transform dot rect dot width. So this is the x position, the same position minus the width, so it gets moved to all the way to the left, so it starts outside the casting bar. And then everything else is the same. Cast transform dot position dot y, cast transform dot position dot z. So now it sets the x position a little different, but the y and z position is going to be exactly the same. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is to set start doing some functionality here. The next thing we need to do is to create our spells. We can actually just hard code them up here. Hard code spells. So up here we're just gonna make new instances of all our spells. So we're gonna write private spell and call this one fireball equals new spell. And now you can see it needs all these things we added before in the constructor. It needs a name, fireball. It needs a cast time, let's say it takes 2 seconds to cast a fireball, and needs a color, let's make it red. And then we can do the same. Basically you can just copy this, paste it a couple of times, then we're gonna make a frostbolt, call it frostbolt here, and it takes 1.5 seconds to cast that, for example, and I want it to be blue. And down here we're gonna make a heal, and it's just gonna have the name heal, and it takes 1.5 seconds also to cast that, and the color should be green. Actually, let's just say it takes 1 second to cast the heal. Okay, so here are our 3 spells we can cast. So when we've done that, we need to create the function that actually casts these spells. So I want to make a coroutine to cast these spells so that we can fade out the bar while we are casting and everything, and we can do other things when we do that. And that's basically why we're going to create a coroutine that makes sure that the cast bar moves and we don't get stuck there when it's moving. So first of all, we're going to make this coroutine. So we're going to write under our update, we're going to write private enumerator. And we're going to call this coroutine cast spell. And this coroutine is going to take a spell in as parameter because we need to tell cast spell that it should cast a fireball or a frostbolt or a heal. So going to give it a spell here called spell. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is to set the color of the image. And as you remember here, we created this image up here, and this is the image that we want to change the color of. And to do that, we need to access it down here and change the color. But before we do that, actually there's one more thing we need to do and start, because right now the image is not set to anything. So we need to get the image down here like we did with the cast transform. We also need to say cast image equals get component image, else we're going to have a problem when we try to change the color because we haven't made a reference to the image that is sitting out here on the cast bar, this image here. Before it was just null, but now we just created the reference so that we can actually use this image. So just go to your start and write that cast image here if you haven't done that already. Hope this is not too confusing because I'm jumping up and down. So when we've set that image, go back to your cast spell. And now you want to get the image color from the spell. So first of all, we need to write cast image dot color, and this color needs to be equal to the spell that we are providing here. So it needs to be equal to spell dot color. But as you can see, we can't access the color right now because if we jump back into the spell here, you'll see that the spell color here is private, and the correct way of accessing the spell color is to create a property so that we can access it. So you can do that in two different ways. If you have Visual Studio, you should be able to right click on the spell color, press refactor, and then encapsulate field, or press Ctrl RE. But if you press encapsulate field, press OK, and it's going to make this public property for you. And basically what it does, it creates a name called spell color with a capital letter here in the beginning, and it returns the spell color here, and it sets the spell color. And we don't want to change the color, so just delete the set here. And as you can see, it returns this spell color here. And if you don't have Visual Studio and you can't right click on it and press refactor encapsulate, well, then you can just write this code by yourself in Mono or whatever you have. So public color, give it a name here, which should be different than the original name, and then get return, and then return the variable you want to return. So if we go back in here and press spell dot, then you'll see that the spell color is actually available now. So you can click on that and finish the line with the semicolon. So now we actually just set the color of our casting bar to the color of the spell. So the next thing we need to do is to reset our casting bar. So when we start to cast a spell, we need to go to the start position. So the spell, what I call cast transform. Yes, the cast transform that position should be equal to start position. So when I start casting a spell, I'm going to move my casting bar all the way to the left so that I can start casting, and it moves all the way to the right. So next thing I need to do is to calculate how much time is left in my my cast. So I'm going to make a float here called time left, and it's going to be equal to time dot delta time. because I'm going to use this variable to calculate the time left. So when I've let's say I have a cast in 2 seconds, after 1 second, then this time left needs to be 1 second, for example, because there's 1 second left. So the next thing we need to do is to calculate the rate of how much we need to move our casting bar over an amount of time. So let's say we have a cast in for 10 seconds. Well, then we need to calculate how much we need to move our casting bar every time this cast spell runs, so that we will move it all the way from left to right during those 10 seconds. So we're just going to make a float here called rate, and it's going to be equal to 1.0 f divided by the casting time of the spell. And to access the casting time of the spell, to go back into the spell here, go to casting time, right click on it, refactor, encapsulate field, pressing OK. And as before, you can just delete the set value here, because we only need to receive, like, get the value. The get is used to getting the value out, and set is using to set the value, and we have no use of setting the value from our script. So divided by spell dot cast time. So this is the rate that we need for calculating how much we need to move our object. Next, we need to make the progress. So progress is equal to 0.0 from the beginning, because the progress is 0 when we start casting our spell. So now we have set up our variables. Now we need to create the functionality that actually moves our casting bar. So we're going to make a while loop, and a while loop basically runs as long as the condition in these parentheses here are true, and it's going to run as long as progress is less or equal to 1.0. Inside this while loop here, we need to move the transform. So we're going to take our cast transform, that position, and we're going to set that equal to vector3.lerp, because we need to lerp from one position to another. So lerp, the position from, is the start position, and the tush position is end position, and the float t is the progress, because we need the progress, and when that progress is 1, we're done, and when it's 0.5, well, then we're halfway through our movement. And when we've done that, well, then we need to change our progress by saying progress plus equals rate, because we calculated how much we need to move up here, multiplied by time dot delta time. And the reason that we multiply by time with delta time is because we want to use the time to calculate how much we need to move. And if we didn't do that, well, then it would act differently on different computers, because some computers run this more often because their CPU is faster. So to make it sure that it runs the same way on every single computer we're running this game on, well, then we multiply by the time delta time to make it frame rate independent, basically. The next thing we need to do is to calculate the what's called the time left, and the time left, it's going to be equal to plus equal time dot delta time. We're just going to use the time here. So this is how we calculate our time left. We're not going to use it for anything right now, the time left. We're going to do that later when we add the text and everything, but now we already calculated it. So the next thing we need to do is write yield return null. And the reason we return null is because we don't want to wait. Usually we can use a coroutine to wait for a few seconds before it runs again and everything, but we don't want it to wait, so we're just gonna yield return null. So when a coroutine gets time again, it just continues from where it was before. And the reason that we used it in a coroutine instead of just running it in our update loop is because if we made a while loop inside our update here, the rest of the update wouldn't be able to run, because the while loop would just block it until it's done running. So the last thing we want to do is to make sure that our transform has the right end position. So whenever we're done with all this, if we overshoot our target a little, well, then we're just gonna say cast transform that position equals end position, just to make sure we put it in the right place. So now we have the base of our spellcast function. and we need to cast it somewhere, and we can do that in update by adding our number keys or something to cast it. So I'm just gonna say if my input.get key down, sorry, that get key down, here we go, if that's key code dot alpha 1, and that's basically just the number 1 on your keyboard on top of your Q and W and all those numbers we have up there. You can add another button if you want to. And then I'm gonna start coroutine. I'm gonna cast spell here, and then I'm gonna add a new spell here, and it's gonna be my fireball. Okay, there's not gonna be any. Yes. So now I should be able to cast a fireball when I press the first button here. So let's save and go out and give it a try. Okay, so when you're back in the editor, just take the casting bar script here and drag it onto your casting bar component, or sorry, the casting bar object. So you'll see that the casting bar script is gonna be applied to it. And one more thing, there's a mask here. You can just remove that from the casting bar. Just right click and press remove. We don't need that right now. So let's see if I run this game and I press my 1 button, well, then it starts casting, and when it's done it's just filled up. So I can cast a fireball now. Okay, so there's still a lot of things we need to do. We need to make sure that the casting bar is not visible when we're not casting, and we need to be able to cast other spells, and it needs to fade out when it's done casting, and we need to show the text on the casting bar so that we can see that we're casting a fireball and how long is left of the cast. So let's add the other spells first. So if we go back into our script here, then we basically just copy this one a couple of times and then call this one alpha 2 and alpha 3. And I want to cast my frostbolt on 2. I want to cast my heal on 3. Save that. Also, right now, when I if I jump back into Unity here, and if I spam my buttons, you'll see that I can I should be able to cast. See, I can spam it so it fucks up here because I'm not done casting my spell before it resets. If I spam my buttons here. So I want to make sure that I'm unable to spam the button as long as I'm casting a spell. So up here in my fields, I'm gonna create a new private bool called casting, and it's just gonna be false. So I'm gonna go to my start here and say casting equals false, and then I'm gonna go back to my cast spell here. Just gonna zoom out a little and make if casting. So only if I am not casting, so I'm gonna make this exclamation mark in front of it. Then I'm gonna do all this. So I'm gonna take all these things, cut them and paste them inside my casting here. And when I start casting, I'm gonna say casting equals true. And not until I'm done with everything here, well, then I'm gonna say casting equals false. So now I shouldn't be able to spam my button, so it fucks the casting bar up. See if I go back here, spam it, then it resets even though I'm spamming it. I can try to cast my frostbolt, try to cast my heal here. Okay, so that is fixed now. So the next thing I want to do is actually to add my text on the casting bar. So we're going to have 2 different kinds of text. We're going to have the text that says how long we have been casting and how long the cast is, and then we're going to have the text that tells us what kind of spell we're casting. So we need to add 2 texts, and we can do that by right clicking on the cast here, selecting UI, and then selecting text. So one text is going to be the spell name, so just click on it called spell name. And the other text, so right click on the casting bar again, going to UI and then selecting text again, and it's gonna call cast time or something. Cast time, there we go. I'm gonna make the text white I don't know what you want to do, but I'm just going to keep mine white, and the spell name here is also going to be white. So if you select both of them and just select the color to white. The next thing I'm going to do is to remove the text inside them, because there's not going to be any text as standard. I'm going to go with Arial as font. You can add your own font, or if you want it to be more fancy than I do. The font style is going to be bold, and the size is just going to be 14 here. Okay. So the spell name is going to be placed in the left side of the casting bar. So if you select the rect tool and then move the spell name to the left side of the casting bar, and then you take the edge here and move it a little to the right to make a little gap here, so it doesn't it isn't placed too close to the edge of it, so it's easier to read. Other than that, you also want to select the best fit here, so it fits inside this as good as possible. And I'm just gonna go with 15 and 15. You can play around with scripting this so it fits better, but I'm just gonna show you the concept of doing this. So if you have some things that you want to change in the text, then feel free to do that. Next thing is the cast time. I want to place that in the left side, put it to the middle here, and as I did before, I want to make sure that the cast doesn't go over the black border here. I'm just going to move it a little to the left here, maybe a little closer. Yes. Okay, so I want the text to be placed in the right side here, so when I've selected my cast time, I take the alignment and say the right side, and the same goes for spell name. I'm just going to have it in the left side, and it's already aligned to the left. So now I have my two objects set up for writing the cast time and the cast name on the onto the cast bar. So the next thing I need to do is to basically to create a script that writes this text. One more thing actually, as you can see here, the spell name and cast time is under the cast bar. I don't want to do that because then they're gonna move with the green thing when it moves out. So take these two and drag them outside the cast bar here, and then drag them under the cast bar, so that they're not placed on the cast bar, because then the text is going to move with the cast, and we don't want that. We want them to place outside. So just place them outside under the mask here, as a child under the mask. Okay, when you've done that, jump back into your script, because now we need to write some code so that we can see the text. So when you're back in the script, go to the top to your fields here and add two new fields. The first field is going to be a text, public text, and call that cast time. And the other one is also going to be a public text, and it's going to be called spell name. So these two are going to be the cast time and the spell name text here. So when you've done that, we need to go back into our cast spell function here, or coroutine, because that's the one that's gonna add some functionality to our text. So before the while loop, just write that our spell name equals spell dot name, and as before, if you can't see the name here, you need to go back into your spell class, right click on name, refactor, encapsulate field, and get it like this, and remove the set. So now I can access the name from my cast bar script. Spell.name, and as usual, it's the spell we are adding here. So if it's fireball, then we get the fireball, and it's of course going to be spell name.text, because we need to get text on the component here. If we go into Unity, you will see that we have a text here. This is the one we get, and this is the text we're accessing. When we say spell name dot text, then we access this text here, so we can write something here. One more thing I just noticed, it's written in the top of the health bar, sorry, not health bar, cast bar. We want it to be in the middle, so here you can access the middle alignment um, this is like the vertical alignment, and it's gonna be the middle here, and do the same for your cast time here, middle as well. I'm just gonna delete this text again. Okay, so let's jump back into the script. So this is all we need to do for our spell name. The next thing we need to do is a little more tricky, because we need to get the time it takes to cast our spell. So we're gonna go to our under our time left here and say cast time dot text equals time left to string plus, and then I want this to be in the middle, so it's like, so we can see the difference between the cast time we're on right now and how long it takes to cast. So plus spell dot cast time to string, and the same is gonna go down here under our while loop here. I'm gonna set it to cast time dot text. I'm just gonna say that it's gonna be our spell cast time and spell cast time, so that if we overshoot it by 0.1 or something, so it's not gonna be written. For example, if a spell cast takes 1 second, it's not gonna be 1.0.1 slash 1. So it's gonna be 1 slash 1, just to make sure if we overshoot it, then we just write the correct text here to make it look better. So this basically writes the correct text, this writes the text in real time. Okay, when we've done that, we can go back into Unity. And the first thing we need to do when we're back in the editor is to make sure that the script gets those two text references that it's asking for. So if you click on the cast bar here, you'll see that it asks for a cast time and a spell name. So just take the spell name and the cast time from here and drag it onto the right places. Now I of course put it wrong. So cast time on cast time, of course, and spell name on the spell name. Okay. So when you run it here, you'll see that it might not look as good as you want it to right now, because we need to change one thing, but I just want to show you how it looks before we change it, so you'll see why we are doing some of these things. If I cast now, you'll see that this text is pretty crazy, the way it's like written, because it has all these numbers after it, and it looks like it's flickering, because some of the when it has more digits, then it has a longer range than when it has less digits, so it looks a little funky. So one thing we need to do is, I just noticed, is that I need to take the cast time here and make it bold, so it looks better. And then I need to make best fit on that one as well, and say 14 and 14, wasn't that what I used? It was 15, so 15 and 15. And I want to get 2 digits after the dot, so the only thing I need to do is to go here and say F2 to say, tell it needs to use that format with 2 digits when it uses to string. So just copy that F2 and paste it in all to strings here. So if I save that and go back into Unity and play my game, then it should look way better now. And as you can see, it doesn't have those long digits now. Same goes Frostbolt, and the same with heal. So now I have my cast bar, but as you saw in the intro, I had some fading out and fading in here, so it looked a little better. When I start casting my spell, it fades in, and when it's done, it fades out. So let's add that little finishing touch before we're done with the tutorial. It's actually fairly easy to handle the fade in and fade out part. The only thing you need to do is to handle everything under the canvas as one unit, so we can fade all of them out at the same time. And to do that, we need to add a new component to our canvas, and that component is called a canvas group. So just click on your canvas here, go to add component, then find the UI, sorry, not the UI, then find the layout button. So click add component, find the layout, go to canvas group, and then you'll see that there's a canvas group added, and this is the alpha value, and that's the value we want to change from our script. So as you can see, if I take this alpha value and tone it down, you'll see that the whole the whole casting bar actually disappears. And that's what we want to do from our script. So jump back into your script and then go to the top of the script And here we want to add two new things. We want to make a public canvas group, so we can access the canvas group we just added, called canvas group. And then we want to make a speed, because we want to decide how fast our canvas is going to fade in or fade out. So we're going to make a public float called fade speed. And this is the speed that decides how fast we're going to fade in or out. So to handle all this, we need to create two new coroutines. And these coroutines are going to be fade in, and the other one is going to be fade out. So the first one I'm going to make is fade out. So public, or just private, enumerator, and we're going to call it fade out. And we're going to make a while loop here, because it want to run this coroutine as long as our alpha is larger than 0, because we're fading out and we're moving from 1 towards 0. So our canvas group dot alpha, as long as it's larger than 0, then we want to do this. And what we want to do is that we want to say float new value equals fade speed times time dot delta time. And if our canvas group dot alpha minus new value, so if the value we already have minus the canvas groups, if the value we already have minus the new calculated value, if that's larger than 0, well, then we want to say that our canvas group dot alpha equals the new value. We don't want to go below 0, so just gonna do like this. And if we go below 0, if the alpha value minus the new value is less than 0, then we're just gonna say else, just say canvas group dot alpha equals 0. And actually up here, we don't want to put it as the new value. We want to add the new value on top of the value we already have in our alpha. So we're gonna make minus equals here instead of just equals. So canvas group dot alpha minus equals new value. And then down here I'm just gonna say yield return new null. Sorry, not new, return null, of course. So yield return null. So that's the fade out part. We also need to make the fade in. So private enumerator fade in. And it's basically going to be the same as up here, just the reverse part, the reverse function. So instead of saying while canvas group alpha is larger than 0, then we're going to say while canvas group dot alpha is less than 1, because now we're going the other direction. So as long as it's less than 1, then we say float new value equals fade speed times time dot delta time. To get the new value, we need to set as the alpha value. And if our canvas group dot alpha plus the new value, just gonna put this into square this in, if that one is less than 1, well, then we wanna say that our canvas group dot alpha plus equals the new value. So if the new value plus the current alpha value doesn't exceed 1, well, then we add the new value. Else we'll say canvas group dot alpha just equals 1, straight 1. So we don't go over 1, because if we go over 1, then it's going to be faded out, even though we want it to not be faded out. I had some problems with that earlier. So we yield return null. Okay. So one more thing we need to add in these two coroutines is that whenever we're done casting a spell, it starts to fade out. But if I start casting a new spell before it's done fading out, well, then it should start fading in right away. But if the coroutine fade out is already running and fade in starts to run, well, then these two coroutines are working against each other, and it's one is trying to fade it out and the other one is trying to fade it in. So they're gonna keep running, and you're never gonna get faded out and you're never gonna get faded in. So to prevent this, we need to make sure that when one coroutine starts, it stops the other one. So when I start fade out, I need to say stop coroutine fade in. So whenever I start to fade out, then it stops fading in. And I need to do the other way around down here in the beginning of my fade in. So I need to say stop coroutine fade out. When I've done that, I need to call these coroutines, and I need to call them inside my cast spell. So when I start casting a spell, I want my casting bar to fade in. So I'm gonna say start coroutine fade in. And when I'm done casting my spell down here, I'm gonna say start coroutine fade out. And that's basically all the code we need so far. So let's jump back into Unity. And when we're back here, we need to add the new things we just made our script ask for. So if we click on our mask and go to cast bar, you'll see that it has a fade speed and a canvas group. And to get the canvas group, just take your canvas, drag it from your hierarchy here into the canvas group, and then say we have a fade speed of 2, for example. You can adjust this as much as you want to. When you're done that, you can actually run it to test. Or actually, I want to do one more thing. If I click on the canvas, I want to set the alpha to 0 from standard, so I can't see my casting bar unless I start casting a spell. So if I press 1, it's going to fade in, cast my fireball, and fade out. Cast 2, L3, it's going to cast my heal, and 2, it's going to cast my frostbolt and fade out. And as you can see, if I keep spamming it, it's just going to restart it before it's done fading out. And if I start fading out and I start casting a new one, it just fades in. So they don't work against each other, these coroutines. So that's basically it for this tutorial. Thank you very much for watching it, and if you want to support me, please get the project in the description below, and check out my other tutorials. I have health bar tutorials, inventory tutorials, and if you have any suggestions or any comments or anything, just leave it in the section below.